Hello everyone, my name is Michael SK, and welcome back to Umineko When They Cry. In this one, we're going to be jumping into episode 7, because in the previous video, I did a bit of a intermission again, just going back through on a stream to see if I can figure things out. I feel like I haven't, but then again, that's just me being the pessimistic guy I am, and in the video before that, we wrapped up episode 6. Got that all cleaned up, and yet again, I have no idea what to think, what to really take away from all that we've seen, for the most part. I did throw out some predictions in terms of, like, who Battler could be, what his sin may have been. It probably isn't anything as crazy as I think it is. I think it's more in, like, I don't know, like, I've brought it up in my intermission video, but I feel like that's, like, the big catalyst as to things to come. I don't think things are necessarily his fault. Or maybe they are. I'm not entirely sure. But it seems like that 6-year gap and what initiated it is kind of like our biggest clue. And in my intermission video, I apparently went over something that was the sin. The sin was in there somewhere. So if I could just try to nail that one down, I'm in the clear. But many of you have come forward with areas that I should review, things that I should look back on, and things to consider. So even so, I'm going to be resuming here for episode 7 and getting the show on the road. I'm still going to be trying to figure things out and rack my brain over everything that you guys continue to show me, directions you guys decide to help point me into. That won't end. And I'm very grateful to have a lot of you guys willing to make the adventure a whole lot more interesting. So I stand by the predictions that I came up with 2 videos ago, and to save you guys the trouble of the previous video, I mainly looked at episode 1, which I think this time around was actually very helpful because I was looking at the killings, what Battler saw, what his perspective was, what may have gone under the radar, and I'm highly suspicious of Kanun and Shanun going into really the remainder of our journey here. I think the servants deserve to have a lot of the attention on them. I feel like in my previous intermission, before we went into episode 6, I was very much not paying attention to them as much as I was the family members and the sins that they are probably going with that has led them to, you know, not be in the right state of mind. But I think being in the right state of mind is also another thing to highly consider, the mental states of these people driving the decisions that they make. So, yeah, there's a whole lot that I came up with, not a whole lot that I wanted to review. It's just that there's so much, and I think that's a good thing, because there's just so much that you can go through here. There's, I don't know, like, I love a lot in terms of quality. Quantity and quality together is hard to find, but I feel like that is what you get with Umineko When They Cry. Anyways, that's enough rambling. Let's jump into episode 7, Requiem of the Golden Witch. Good morning. Today is the day of the funeral for the Golden Witch and her game. The days of the game have now ended, and fond memories are all that remain. Here, the cold, hard truth will be revealed, and the game will meet its death. There's a bit of difficulty. No idea what episode 8 has going on for it, but as we enter these last 2 episodes, it feels very reminiscent, at least based on what you guys have told me, reminiscent to how Higurashi was set up, where 1 through 4, that's your questions, and then 5 through 8, that's your answers. However, 5 and 6, you know, that things start to, you know, straighten out a little bit. The answers have not been necessarily clear in anything. I want to say that things will start being thrown in my face, which I'm all for because I'm an idiot and I need that help. Also, you know, between my previous time here with Umineko and now, I have adjusted my audio setup yet again, so it is very, very likely that my volume settings are not correct. So this one's going to be a little bit of a test to get back into the swing of things here. And I apologize.
土は土に、灰は灰に、塵は塵に、幻は幻に、そして夢は夢に、夢とは寄せては返す波間の真砂に描くもの。それは波が寄せるたびに真っ白に戻ってしまう 儚だから心なき人はそれを描くことを無駄なことだと嘲笑うだろう。しかしもう彼女の描いた夢を消す波は二度と訪れない。彼女が最後に描いた美しき夢はもう永遠に消えることはない。さあさあ思い浮かべてごらんなさい。それは暖かき春の日の柔らかき午後の日差しがそのまま陰ることを忘れたかのよう。それはとてもとても素敵なことなのだから。
Is it though?
あなたの最後の夢の立ち会い人、プブリウス・ワルギリア・マロ。
Vergilia? The suspects were gathered in a room, and several inquisitors of heresy were reporting on the results of their investigation. Their uniforms closely resembled those of... what the hell name is this? Eisern Jungfrau? But they were slightly different. I think that name has come up before. Also different were the badges signifying their department. Then came the sound of someone clapping their hands once. It was the lead female inquisitor. She was announcing that all reasoning had been completed. Okay, yeah, I can tell the volume is definitely wrong. I'll have to see what it looks like whenever I'm editing, but yeah, this'll be like a one-time thing. I'll fix the volumes in the next one, maybe, hopefully. At the other end of her pointing finger was a quivering maid with frightened eyes. Her name was... well, no, that's not important. What matters now is that she could have entered the closed room study where the victim was found whenever she pleased. And furthermore, that her claimed alibi for the time of her crime, or at time of the crime, had been proven to contradict the facts. Shaking, the maid tried to continue in her illogical pleading, but all of her statements had already been seen through. Huh?
どうして私が敬愛する旦那様を殺さねばならないのですか？動機がありません。理由がありません。誰がいかにして犯したか、それのみが立証できれば十分であると知りたまえ。金刑、謹んで申し上げる。ミステリーに動機は不要であると知りたまえ。
Okay, whoever this lead inquisitor is, she speaks very familiar with the, it's one of the two gals that worked with Nox. Or Eleanor. What was her name? I can't remember. It's not Eleanor, is it? The Inquisitor spoke coldly. Can I check that, actually? I can't remember the names. Nope, I can't check that at all. She's not present. Delanor, that's the name I'm looking for. I was like, there's another letter in there somewhere. Delanor's her name. Okay, there's Vergilia. After finishing her witch's prayer, Vergilia stepped back from the coffin, which lay on an altar bedecked with many beautiful roses. In her place, Battler moved to the front of the coffin wearing his territory lord's cape. Though the cape was supposed to represent dignity and majesty, it somehow made Battler look smaller. And Battler held a book with a majestic binding in his hand. It was a game record that had just been written. Or perhaps it was a tale, a game, or else a fragment. Written in it was the dream that would be more enjoyable for her than any other. And Battler pressed it against his forehead and contemplated for some time. Okay, is he not gonna say anything here? Okay, I don't think he was supposed to say anything there. He kissed it and laid it gently in the coffin. I guess he was just making a sigh. It rested upon her chest. She looked like a little girl clutching her favorite stuffed animal as she drifted off to sleep.
これは俺からお前に捧げる唯一の物語だ。
This tale will be shut up with you in your coffin for all eternity. so no one will be able to read it except for you there in your coffin. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of reading to be done
猫
in a
箱に閉
coffin.
ざされた唯一不変不可侵の永遠の物語。
だから誰にも物語を汚せない、否定できない、反論できない、俺とこいつだけの、二人だけの唯一絶対の真実。
Interesting.
クソ誰が
A man dashed through a town wrapped in twilight. The daytime hustle and bustle of this beautiful village, which combined the traditional with the orderly and the classic style of the last century, now seemed like a mere dream. The orange setting sun was already hidden behind the clock tower, and the narrow alleyway was rapidly descending into darkness. As the gas lights began to turn on, they only made the darkness of the twilight stand out all the more. The man sprinted. There was no time. He had to hurry. He had had several experiments to do and things he had to check, and it had all taken longer than he had expected.
ああ、確かにそうだろうな。ミステリーはフーダニットとハウダニットさえあれば十分だ。
In the mystery genre, the motive, or the whodunit, is given the lowest priority. To have a murder, you need to have a culprit, and he needs to commit a crime. Motive isn't required for that, so it's usually the most ignored element. In fact, these days, there are even some who call it unnecessary.
ホワイダニットだけで犯人が決まっちまったら、そりゃミステリーじゃねえ。プロパガンダだ。だからって、動機ってやつを、心ってやつを、ないがしろにしちゃいけねえんだ。
Yeah, we keep bouncing back and forth here. I'm not entirely sure what we have going on here.
私たちは彼女の最後の眠りがどれほど楽しいものであるかを知っています。だから何人たりとも彼女の眠りを妨げることはできないでしょう。楽しい夢に微笑むこの眠りを妨げられるものなどいるわけもないのですから。さあ、私たちはもう立ち去りましょう。私たちが賑やかにしていたら彼女の夢を眠りを覚ましてしまいますよ。
そうだな。寝ている子には毛布をかけて部屋を暗くして静かに立ち去るのが決まりってもんだ。
After looking at the coffin one last time, Virgilia turned around quietly. Battler did the same, but then he stopped and turned to face the rose-covered altar. And Battler offered up his final words within his heart. As long as those words didn't leave his mouth, no one would be able to know what they were. However, those words of the heart caused Battler's expression to change several times. At first, he frowned sadly, and then his face clouded with remorse, and then changed to a bitter, exasperated smile. It flashed through several varied expressions. Then the final expression that crossed his face was surprisingly a gentle smile. Something rose to Battler's lips. However, he bit it back down. There could certainly be no words to describe the feelings he kept in his chest. So saying anything aloud would probably be crude. Battler understood this and stopped himself from speaking once more with a wry smile.
ありがとう。
お礼を言われるようなことは何も。
あとを頼む。
After seeing Virgilia nod back at him, Battler turned away from the altar one more time and left the chapel. Virgilia also disappeared, and with that all disturbances that might have interrupted her blissful sleep had vanished. Her with quotations. The inquisitors of heresy listened with calm, no scornful gazes. They listened to the frantic babbling of the maid accused of murdering her master. However, nothing she said could bury the fault in her own alibi. I did not mean to right-click, my bad. They were all mere emotional arguments. I loved and respected the master so much, I had no motive for killing him. No matter how much she spoke, it only made her look more and more like the floundering true culprit struggling pathetically. The requirements for the whodunit and howdunit had been satisfied. As for the whydunit, the motive, the heart. No matter how much she spoke of gratitude for her master, who had graciously given her a job when she'd been left by the wayside after various misfortunes, it did not help her case in the slightest in the mystery genre. Therefore, her motive did not matter. All of that could just be squeezed out of the culprit afterwards. An inquisitor of heresy took out a roll of parchment and held it forth, cutting off the maid's sobs and protests.
あなたがいかにして犯行に及んだか、その告発は大法院にて受理され、あなたの逮捕を許可したことを知りたまえ。これがあなたの逮捕状なり、動機など不要、犯人の特定には一切不要のものと知りたまえ。その上で謹んで申し上げる。我らが SSVD は罪を認めぬ犯罪者に真実を告白させる強制的手段を持つと知りたまえ。我らが異端審問官が正義にて祝福された審問具にて
What the
あ
fuck?
なたの獅子を絞り上げて焼いて潰して引き伸ばして吊るし上げ、そこより赤き真実を絞り出してみせることを申し上げたてまつる。自白すらも不要。補佐官一同、そのメイドを逮捕したてまつれ。
私じゃないです。私は旦那様を。
Oh, hello.
やめな。そのメイドは犯人じゃねえ。
A man kicked the door open, and the Inquisitors were all shocked at the sight of him.
なぜあなたがここにいるものなり。この事件はもうあなたの担当ではないと知りたまえ。
うるせえ。アリバイがないやつを一人見つけたらそいつが犯人なのか。犯行には動機が、心がいらねえってのか。犯行はな、人が犯すんだよ。心がねえ事件なんて存在しねえ。心を無視した推理なんざ俺は絶対に認めね
え。あなたのホワイダニット至上主義の主張には辟易するものと知りたまえ。
I mean, it's something that even Erica had brought up before whenever she was throwing shit over shoot, who was it?
ホワイダニットなど無用。
Why am I blanking on names today?
審問すればかようなものを容易に絞り出せるものなり。大法院もその女が犯人であることを認めたものなり。
大法院。
Oh, it was Natsuhi.
そのメイド以外の全員にアリバイがあるならきっとそうなんだろうという。
Yeah, back in episode 5 where we had Natsuhi being blamed for everything, and like Erica was like she was covering all the bases, and that included the who done it. Like, sure, it was pretty ridiculous, but I mean, it was still there.
お前の独りよがりを鵜呑みにしただけだ。他の被疑者のアリバイが崩れれば白紙に戻る。他の連中のアリバイも無様なもんじゃない。大広間の時計の音は正確に正午を刻んだか。勝手口の犬は全員に吠えるのか。確かにお前はメイドのアリバイの偽証を崩した。それは見事なもんさ。だがそれで終わりなのか。メイドに犯行が可能でもそれを行う動機はあるのか。他の人間のアリバイは完璧なのか。他にもアリバイを偽証している人間がいる。それを探すことを怠るな。犠牲者に怨恨は、金銭関係でトラブルは、動機を捨てるな。心を捨てるな。動機なんて後付けでどうでもいいなんて、そんな乾ききったミステリーごっこは卒業しちまいな。
メイドが犯人でないなら、なぜに彼女はアリバイを偽証するものなりや。
I mean, people fake shit all the time. Doesn't necessarily mean they're a goddamn criminal. Like,
それを問うことも茶番。
come on.
審問し、赤き真実を絞り出し、犯行時刻のすべてを赤吉で署名させるだけで良いものと知りたまえ。
ああ、そうだろうな。お得意の拷問で全てを神の目線から客観的に赤裸々に絞り出せばいいさ。でもな、言っておく。心のねえミステリーと推理のやり方はな、俺が絶対に認めね
え。すでに本事件は本館に継承されたるものなり、ここに命令書もあるものなり。さあ、補佐官一同、構うことはなしと知りたまえ。そのメイドの逮捕を命じるものなりや。
When she gave this order, her subordinates hesitated, looking back and forth between their superior and that man.
させねえよ。本当の犯人は他にいる。動機から推理可能だ。アリバイトリックなんざ古典通り。心を忘れるんじゃね
え。心など不要なり。犯行可能な疑わしき人物を導き出し、審問して赤き真実を絞り出せばいい。万一犯人でなかったなら、別の疑わしい容疑者を審問にかければいいだけなりや。
Yeah, wonderful idea.
そんなのは推理じゃね
え。退きたまえ。その女を逮捕するものなりや。そのメイドが犯人であると知りたまえ。
使用人が犯人であることを禁ずる。
Oh man, he's just throwing out some red. The words of power blasted away the aides trying to arrest the maid.
Van Dyne's 20則第11則
Van Dyne's 20 rules, what the fuck?
このメイドを拷問したかったら、第二夫人とその愛人のアリバイをもう一度洗いな。
その二人には犯行時刻の明白なアリバイが。
あの程度でアリバイかよ。ボンクラのお前に分かるように説明してたら、主席を名乗りたかったら、その程度の捜査と推理を見せてみな。それまでこのメイドへの逮捕状は俺が預かるぞ。
ならあなたにそのメイドが犯行を犯さなかったことが証明できるなりや。
I mean, isn't the red truth like is that not good enough?
犯行時刻に彼女が台所を離れていたことは明らかと知りたまえ。彼女は犯行時刻にどこで何を。その女にも本官にもあなたにも誰にも証明は不可能なりや。なればこそ審問の拷問具で赤き真実を絞り出すほかなきなり。
It just sort of seems like this woman really wants to torture this maid or person in general.
からはシヘドでも真実でも好きなだけ絞り出してやる。だがな、真犯人じゃねえ人間はいかなる審問も拷問も許さね
え。だからこそあなたは甘いと批判されるものなり。疑わしきは全て審問。それが我ら異端審問官の魔女裁判であると知りたまえ。
そうだな。俺たちは異端審問官だ。邪悪な魔女を撃つ。それが商売さ。だが万一にも市民を傷つけてはならない。
Yeah, wouldn't that be a crime itself?
疑ってはならない。人間は誰しも自分だけの真実を持つ。それは罪を犯した時にのみ暴かれ、俺たちにはそれを暴く資格が与えられている。だがな、ねえんだよ。
何が？
罪なき人間の罪なき真実を。
The maid finally realized that he was trying to protect her.
どちら様か存じませんが、ありがとうございます。私本当に犯人じゃないんです。
んなことは知ってる。お前の彼氏は全てを投げ出してお前のためにアリバイを証言するという。感謝しとけ。あの若造は名誉も肩書きもお前に比べたら大したもんじゃねえと言いやがったぜ。
そんなことをしたらあの人は。
それには及ばねえ。恋人たちの秘め事を暴くのは三流雑誌の仕事だ。ミステリーじゃねえ。俺は心のない推理は絶対に許さねえ。
Then, for the first time, the man's sullen expression relaxed and he patted the maid's head roughly.
彼氏と幸せになりやがれ。だが勤務中に相引きするのはあまり褒められねえ。時々にしとくんだな。
ありがとうございます。ありがとうございます。
Aw, man, I'm being invited to play Counter-Strike. These words were heard only by the two of them. The man had learned of her innocence, which could only be proven by exposing the secrets of a pair of young lovers, and he had rushed about in search of a solution, resentful of the arrogance of those trying to expose this by forcible means.
推理はな、犯人を作ることでも心が大事なんだ。探偵気取るなら心を忘れるんじゃねえ。そいつを忘れたら 俺たちはただの知的蹂躙者だ。それを忘れるな。
Yeah, we don't want to be that, you know? I hate that term so much, too. It's so stupid. When the man spoke, the Inquisitors no longer had any way to argue back. This man's name is Will. And yet that's not what everyone used to call him. Head Inquisitor of Heresy of the SSVD, the 8th District Repentance Enforcement Agency of the Great Court of Heaven, Wizard Hunting Wright.
これがお前らへの最後の引き継ぎだ。魔術師狩りのライトの名を継ぐなら忘れるな。絶対だ。
Who the fuck have we just been introduced to? Man, oh man, what is this episode gonna be all about? It sort of seems like we're introducing a whole new thing. We have a whole new thing going on here. Quietly, the rain fell down. The rain of sadness dripped down the outer walls of the chapel, quietly washing away the dust of the world of the living. The chapel doors were open. During a wedding, only those with invitations are allowed inside. However, during a funeral, the doors are open to all who remember the deceased. So this must be a funeral. A shadow holding an umbrella approached the chapel. It was Will. Oh, that's right. We heard the chime. We got to read up on Will here. Let's see. What do we got for him? Okay, so this is still very much in, like, the magical side of things, it looks like. So we have Willard H. Wright. There's no extra I in there. A member of the SSVD, the 8th District Repentance Enforcement Agency of the Great Court of Heaven. Inquisitor, ranked Archbishop, first class. Oh, so he's, like, in the same vein as Delanar, basically, right? Goes by the name Wright of the 20 Wedges, or Wizard Hunting Wright. He was an ace inquisitor in his youth, and was feared for being both ruthless and merciless in his work. However, at some point, there was a change in his work attitude, and his previous flashy escapades became a thing of the past. His current style is often fickle, alternating between laziness and obsessive bursts of energy regarding mere trifles. By now, everyone has given up trying to understand him. He has already submitted his resignation and had it accepted. Only a few days remain before he will lose the name of Wright. Interesting. A reception desk had been set up at the chapel's entrance. Oh, hello. As the shadow approached, Kanun, who had been sitting at the desk, stood up and welcomed him with a bow.
こちらが受付でございます。弔問の皆様にはご褒美を賜っております。ご記帳をお願いいたします。
悪いな。弔問じゃねえ。待ち合わせだ。
You came to a funeral to meet someone? A dubious expression rose to Kanun's face. Will pulled an envelope from his pocket and showed him the sender's name.
失礼いたしました。どうぞお入りを。
すまねえな。せめてそいつをもらえるか。
ありがとうございます。きっとお喜びになられると思います。
Kanun handed him one of a set of golden roses which were being handed out to all the mourners. Will took it, silently bowed his head, and entered the chapel. This is a very unique way of, like, meeting somebody on the witch's side, or the magic side of things. It not being, like, a spontaneous thing, I guess you could say, just, like, during the story to, like, coincidentally assist the magical side of the story. Like, right off the bat, we're being introduced to him. Inside the chapel, several people who appeared to be the family of the deceased were gathered, and they all seemed to be recalling memories of the departed. Calm down, Kinzo. I guess it's been a while since we've had some Kinzo wailing.
お父様、どうかしっかり控え室の方で少し休みましょう。
私が殺したのよ。私が。
とんでもない。どうしてローザ様が殺したことになりましょ
う。お父さん、すごい泣きよね。
ベアトリーチェか。
絶対お母様が亡くなった時より泣いてるわ。
こら、今はそんなこと言うときちゃうで。
Yeah, Hideyoshi's onto something here. Some sobbed, unable to conceal their tears, and some spoke softly of old memories. They were all remembering the dead in their own way, it seemed. When Will approached the altar, several people turned around. Of course, none of them knew who Will was. Paying this no mind, Will walked in front of the casket on the altar, which seemed to be buried under golden roses. Inside the casket, there was no corpse. Instead, as though it lay there in place of a body, it was a single thick book with an extravagant binding. And the space all around it was filled with countless golden roses. There were words printed on the book's cover. To my beloved Beatrice, October 5th, 1986.
Miss Beatrice. Misses だったら許しな。会ったことはねえ。だが、お悔やみ申し上げるぜ。
He took the rose that he had received from the reception area and placed it in the casket. He had absolutely no connection to the woman called Beatrice. However, since he had come to visit a funeral, he had to show this minimum amount of respect for the dead. As part of this, Will prayed for the passage of the dead into the next world. I mean, it makes sense that Beatrice, here in this side of things, is gone. Like, Battler solved everything on both sides of the puzzle, or I guess the chessboard, I guess you could say. Yeah, her existence has now been completely disproven. She no longer is alive. But the whole magic side of things here still exists, it seems. Our work is not done.
私はUshiromiya Krauss、喪主の代行です。こっちは子供のリオン。
はじめまして。
Who the fuck? What? Huh?
Ushiromiya Leon です。
What?
リオン
Yeah, hold on. What? Yeah, one person on the human side. The first child of Krauss and Natsuhi? Jessica is their second child? Huh? Was given the silver ring of the head successor, and will succeed the position of family head upon turning 20. Mild, polite, and without any clear faults, except for being too young, this youth is more suitable to become the next head than any other and is adored by Kinzo? What? Huh?
誰だお前。
理科の理に魚するの魚でリオンと読みます。ちょっと日本人っぽくない名前ですよね。
Will stared at Leon's face, wearing a confused expression. He hadn't seemed particularly interested in Krauss, but Leon had apparently drawn some sort of reaction from him. Is this the child that was supposedly killed all those years ago? The one that doesn't actually have a blood relation? Rather than interest, it was more as though he felt like something was out of place.
旦那様、奥様がそろそろと。そうか。一同の諸君、ここで賑やかにしては、個人もうるさがるだろう。控室の準備が整ったそうだ。場所を変えようではないか。
When Krauss called out to everyone, they began to move towards the chapel waiting room.
すまん。リオンはしばしお客様のお相手を頼む。私はみんなを控室に案内する。
はい、父さん。
It looked like a natural conversation with no awkwardness for either father or child.
親子なのか。
そうですが、何か。
後宮クラウスの子供はジェシカのはずだ。
ジェシカは妹です。お呼びする必要はありますか？
いや、ない。
Apparently, some sort of game was already being played right off the bat. Scratching at his head with an irritated look on his face, Will glanced around.
失礼ですが、あなた様は個人とはどのようなご関係で？
There wasn't one.
全く何もねえ。迷惑な話さ。
ではあなたはどうしてこの葬儀に？
Since Leon was a fairly mild person, Will's behavior was met with nothing more than a blank expression. A normal person would probably have put a dubious look long before this, or put on one. Will scratched his head again and yelled angrily at someone other than Leon.
来たぜ。そろそろ顔を出しやがれ。
The members of the Ushiromiya family had already followed Krauss's instructions and moved to the waiting room. By now, no one could be seen in this cold, vast chapel decorated with golden roses except for Will and Leon. So you've come.
よく来たわね。異端審問官。
Oh, we know who this is. The girl's voice came suddenly from behind the pair. Brunka still. Come on. There she is. When Leon turned around in surprise, a girl had appeared out of nowhere and drifted down on top of the altar. She landed softly on the sacred funeral altar, as though this was perfectly normal, crushing the golden roses under her shoes. Of course, Leon didn't know this girl. Just why on earth were all of these people unrelated to the funeral? Popping up one after another.
俺はもう引退だ。仕事なら新しいライトに頼みな。
いいえ、あなたに頼みたいのよ。この事件を。送った物語は読んでくれたかしら。
斜め読み程度にはな。
あなたがどなたか存じませんが、そこから降りてください。そこは神聖な祭壇ですよ。
Snapping out of a daze, Leon told the girl to get down off the altar, but she ignored this completely. On top of that, Will kept on talking to the girl as though Leon wasn't even there.
リオンとか言ったな。こいつは何者だ？
その子が名乗った通りよ。
Ushiromiya Leon, sorry about that. There was no case of a person with that name appearing in any of the previous games.
お前の駒なのか？
いいえ、このゲーム版の正しく正当な駒。登場人物よ。
ゲームマスターはお前だ。なら、お前の駒だろ。
ベアとの猫箱よりもっと大きな猫箱で閉ざしただけよ。リオンはその中で生まれ得る可能性を持つ人。
そういうことか。結局お前の駒というわけだ。
私が置いた駒という意味では正しいわ。
ただしエリカのような配下の駒ではない。
エリカって誰？
Oh yeah, she's gone.
エリカさん？
理解しようとするな。頭痛になら。
Leon didn't have a clue what they were talking about. However, though neither person was familiar, it seemed clear that they both knew a lot about the Ushiromiya family.
私にはあなたたちが何の話をしているのかわかりません。とにかくそこのお嬢さん、その祭壇から降りてください。後ろ宮家、次期当主としてお願い申し上げます。
Even Leon was finally forced to speak in a raised voice to that girl, who continued to chat while casually standing on the altar. However, the girl ignored this completely. On the other hand, Will did show a reaction.
次期当主はクラウスのはずだ。
父クラウスは私が20歳になるまでの間の当主代行です。20歳になると同時に次期当主である私が当主を継承することになっています。
初耳だ。証拠はあるのか？
It seemed that even Leon was starting to get ticked off by now. And that calm expression appeared to twitch slightly.
これは次期当主に許されている片翼のわしの銀の指輪です。これで証拠になりますか？
銀の指輪？金の？当主の指輪は何度も登場したが、次期当主の銀の指輪など初耳だ。
Yeah, what is with all these different things going on here?
クラウスもジェシカもそんなものを指に通していた記憶がねえ。嬉しいわ。斜め読みにしてはちゃんと読んでくれてるじゃない。魔女のよこす文章はどこにろくでもねえことが書いてあるか。ましてやそれが元老院の大魔女とくりゃな。
あなた方は一体何者なんですか？失礼だが、私には何の話をしているのか、個人への献花がお済みでしたら、どうぞお引き取りを。どうやらあなた方は、当家がおもてなしすべき方々ではないようです。
Leon finally ran out of patience. These were the strictest words that this gentle kid could unleash. However, Will and the girls seemed not to care at all.
俺も来たくて来たわけじゃねえ。
時間の無駄だから 話を進めるわ。ライト、このゲームに挑みなさい。ゲームマスターベルンカステルの名においてこのゲームにあなたを招待してあげるわ。
お断りだ。
どうして？
俺はもう引退する身だ。推理もミステリーも知ったことか。
何をして余生を過ごすというの？魔術師狩りのライトが魔女狩りをやめて。
Not really sure where the wizard hunting part comes in.
俺がここに来たのはあんたと余生を語るためじゃね。
断るために来たと。
ご検察いただき光栄の極みと知りたまいなりや。
なら好きにしたらいいわ。どこへでも行けばいい。ただしここから立ち去れればの話だけれど。
それで条件と報酬は？
In truth, Will had resigned himself from the beginning. He knew that he was incapable of refusing an invitation from the great Lady Bernkastil.
ベアトリーチェを殺したのは誰か。それが私のゲームよ。報酬は私に対するその無礼な口の利き方を許すこととこの礼拝堂を立ち去る権利。
What shitty payment.
退屈を愛さない魔女は存在な言葉を愛すると聞いたぜ。
それは1000年を生き飽きたババア魔女の話よ。私はまだまだ若いからあんたみたいな言葉遣いの男をどんな過酷な運命に閉じ込めてやろうかと無双することを愛するの。
So different reasoning, same consequence.
それで敵は誰だ？
いないわ。妨害などするわけもない。このゲームをあなたが美しく詰めるところをただ私たちは感激したいだけ。仲間も用意する。それがそのリオンよ。
After hearing that name spoken out of the blue, Leon frowned once more. Apparently, they were moving things along without Leon's knowledge or understanding, which the latter seemed to find truly irritating.
リオンは後ろ宮家の人間。後ろ宮家の誰とも面識のないあなたには心強い味方となってくれるでしょう。
何の話か分かりかねますが、事情のわからない話には何もご協力はできかねますよ。
だそうだ。頼もしい限りだな。
私と我が主を楽しませなさい。魔術師狩りのライト、アウアウは行儀のいい感激者だけれど、私は退屈するとポップコーンを投げつけたりしちゃうかもね。
I forgot that that's like the name that she has for her or whatever. And I kinda know why. Will scratched at his head with a displeased look on his face. He wasn't at all interested in getting involved, but by now he realized that he couldn't disobey Bernkastil's orders. And then he approached the casket and pointed at its rose-filled insides.
ベアトリーチェ殺人事件の依頼とのことだが、バンダイン20則第7則死体なき事件であることを禁ず。
悪魔の証明ね。棺にないだけじゃない。死体が存在しないことをあなたが証明できない限り、これはミステリー。
Yeah, I mean, technically, the body doesn't have to be here for the service.
第1則手がかりすべての揃わぬ事件を禁ず。
安心なさい。すべてはここに揃っている。
Though there was no change to Will's unsatisfied expression, he seemed to have understood the general pattern of this place. The simple fact that a mere inquisitor of heresy had been summoned by an uninhibited, fickle, cruel great witch of the Senate meant that he had been treated as no more than a mere underling. All along, he had possessed no way to refuse her.
この空っぽの棺の主を殺したのは誰か。引き受けてやら。ただし、俺の流儀でやらせてもらう。
ご自由に。
Alrighty, well there we go, I guess.
まず最初にすることは、お前に現状を理解させることだな。
Looks like we have a very different situation on our hands for this episode.
それをお願いできると私もとても助かります。
Leo's expression seemed nonplussed, angry, and confused, all at the same time.
キナ、実際に見た方が早い。
いいでしょう。 お供しましょうとも。
Will signaled with his chin for Leon to follow him and spun around. After snorting once in an unsatisfied manner, Leon followed him, as though resigned to see Will's little show. As she watched them leave the chapel, Bernka still sneered silently at them, a cold smile on her face.
尊厳なる感激と戯曲と傍観の魔女。
Okay, well, she doesn't really have all of that down, but good enough.
フェザリーヌなんとかアウアウローラの巫女にして奇跡の魔女。ベルンカステルの名において、このゲームの開始を宣言するわ。物語のタイトルは、黄金の魔女のレクイエム。ベアとの葬儀にふさわしい物語を紡ぎなさい。さて、どんな腹渡を引きずり出してくれるやら。
So this isn't necessarily a case of Beatrice being dead here in the witch's world. This is supposed to be the real world. You have everybody present because this is everybody. This is a whole new story to be told, where Beatrice has died. That is so interesting, which also explains why Rosa said what she said earlier with, you know, her being responsible for Beatrice's death. That aligns with the story back in episode 3. She watched until the pair had left the chapel. Brinkastill's form evaporated into the empty air just as she had arrived. All that remained was her unpleasant cackling. Yeah, I've technically have heard worse here. Like, much worse. Ava Beatrice comes to mind. Outside, it was still raining. When Konon saw the guest and the successor approaching the reception desk, he bowed deeply.
ご苦労様です。休んで結構ですので、外してもらえますか。
カノンです。かしこまりました。
Konon bowed deeply and then disappeared.
下々の名前まではいちいち覚えていないってか。
当家には若い使用人が大勢出入りしており、入れ替わりも頻繁ですので。さて、何をどう理解させてくれるのですか。
What is our time frame right now?
あなた様は何者で、当家にどのようなご用がおありで。
Uh-oh, I'm being called in for the counter-strike yet
もちろ
again.
ん納得させてくれなくて構いません。このままお帰りいただければいいだけですので。
もう帰れねえのさ。俺も誰もな。
もういい加減にしてくれませんか。そのよくわからない煙に巻くような喋り方は。
Oh, that's the Umineko special here.
私にだって我慢の限界というものがあります。私では見送りにならないというなら、源氏と合田にお送りさせてもいいのですよ。
騒ぐな。こいつを見てろ。
見ればわかります。葬儀用のバラです。まさか手品でも見せてくれるおつもりで。
Will took one of the flower offerings and then showed it to Leon, as though pointing out that there were no mechanisms or tricks. And then he slowly lifted it upwards.
見てろ。
ええ、見てますよ。後でも飛び出すんですか。それともクラッカーと万国旗にでも。
Will threw the rose. Anyone would have expected it to fly in an arc and land in some puddle. It didn't, which was why Leon had been struck dumb. The rose thrown by Will certainly had flown in an arc. It should have sped on rapidly through the air. However, as soon as it passed out from the shade of the eaves and was about to reach the rain, it stopped right in midair as though the air surrounding it had turned into syrup. That wasn't all. As it hung in midair, the rose's beautiful golden petals began to darken one after another, and it became a black husk like burnt charcoal. And even after this had happened, it remained suspended there in the air.
これは何の手品ですか。
It has to be a trick after all. It has to. Okay, so since I'm being summoned to play a very toxic game, which you know, we all have our toxic activities of sorts, and gambling. Yeah, we all go back to it, right? But no, great to get episode 7 on, I guess, rolling, on the roll here. I am very curious about this one. This one's gonna play out really differently, but I do hope that we'll be able to come to some proper conclusions and answers with this one nonetheless. Thank you all for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take it easy.